I'm sure most of you are aware, Sadhguru aka Jaggi Vasudev has been in the news lately. And every time Sadhguru is in the news, I find a wonderful lesson that we can all learn from what's happening in that situation. And this time also, he doesn't disappoint. There is something we can learn here. And I'm gonna basically tell you what happened in the news, but I'm no news channel. So this is just a summary of what happened. You can see what exactly happened in a news channel, but I'm going to focus a little more on the lesson that can be learned here. Without further ado, my name's Pranav. You're watching Scienceisdope. Let's begin. This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon and YouTube. If you wish to support me, you can find the links below. So what exactly happened? A father of two daughters. He's a retired professor from what I read. He registers a case with Madras High Court saying that the daughters, instead of taking care of their old and ailing parents, him and his wife, who's also old, they're in their late 60s, I believe, early 70s maybe. The daughters who are 42 and 39, instead of taking care of them, have rejected, all worldly duties and pleasures and whatnot, and they've shaved their heads and they're living an ascetic life, a hermit's life in the Isha ashram, in Sadhguru's ashram. That's what the case says. Now the two daughters dispute this claim, saying that they're doing so under their own free will, under their own volition, under their own choice. And that's a reasonable thing to say because they're both adults and they can make their choices. Now to this, the father says that they're brainwashed and they're probably being fed something that may affect their cognitive faculties, and I have no idea how he's going to prove this. I'm assuming this is not provable, but whatever it is, the judge responded to this, and his words are what really grabbed my attention here. We want to know why a person who had given his daughter in marriage and made her settle well in life is encouraging the daughters of others to tonsure their heads and live the life of a hermitess. And these are very reasonable things to say from the judge. At least that's what I think. Now the Isha Center has gone for the obvious defense of, hey, adults are free to pursue their own paths in life. We have lots of people here who are not monks like this. That's their own choice. And this is also a reasonable defense, in my opinion. But this brainwashing thing, I think we need to talk about that a little bit here. But before I do, the news isn't over. The judge said, hey, what other cases are there with the Isha Yoga Center? We want to look into all that. And there is a police raid that just happened earlier this week. You have videos online of policemen raiding the Isha Center and all that happening. That is all that has happened at the time of me recording this video. Now, I think we should talk about this whole brainwashing thing. Brainwashing or no brainwashing, as an adult, you're allowed to make your own choices as long as it doesn't harm anyone. It doesn't directly harm anyone. You can argue that there is indirect harm happening here with the father and mother, but hey, that's an argument, that's a discussion that needs to be had. But there is no direct harm happening, and adults are allowed to make choices in their life. But is it possible to brainwash someone into making choices that may be harmful? Also, yes, but that doesn't make the choices invalid. Let's talk about the exact choices that the women made. There is an idea of enlightenment that's extremely common in our culture, in this part of the world, in Indic religions especially. It's there in Hinduism, it's there in Buddhism. The legend stories speak of particular characters who attain this enlightenment by living a life of great sacrifice. And so this being very commonplace in culture, it's no surprise that in a lot of places, this is an idea taken for granted. Now, these women who claim to be living this ascetic life by their own choice, by their own free will, why did they choose this? I mean, this is not something people normally do. Why this level of self-sabotage? Obviously, because they believe that this will lead them to a reward of enlightenment. There is spiritual enlightenment at the end of all this suffering. Again, that's an idea we've all been exposed to as we grow up. And this promise of enlightenment is like any promise that is always given out by Sadhguru or the Isha Foundation.
If this one thing is done, one can clearly see whatever chronic ailments that one has, either in the physical body or in the mental scape, will completely vanish. We can show hundreds and thousands of people like this. Within 3 days, we can teach you a simple form of meditation, which will bring down your metabolism by approximately 24%. Chronic ailments like diabetes, hypertension, cardiac ailments, these things can be altered just by bringing about a certain balance in the system. Yogis who go into your room, locked from outside, made use of this energy to dematerialize and disappear.
And you can't really put all the blame on the teachings of Sadhguru or the Isha Foundation, although yes, I do put a lot of blame on them. This again is an idea that we're already primed for. So when someone like Sadhguru says or gives this promise, it's not coming out of nowhere, right? People are more ready to believe in an idea like this because they're already primed for it. Another problem here, you can't really prove that someone is enlightened. What is this enlightenment? Do you attain special levels of intellect? Do you attain special powers? Is there something supernatural that happens to you? And if this does happen this way, is there any demonstration of such a thing happening to any person? If you claim that someone like Sadhguru is enlightened, you're either a comedian or you have no idea what enlightenment is. You have certain beliefs about enlightenment that you've heard from people, that you've read in places. But can you give me one definite example, one verifiable example of a person who is enlightened? And is this demonstrable in some way? If you're gonna go back to someone like Buddha, who according to his legend had attained enlightenment, you do realize that's an account, a story, a legend, right? If there are people today who will say to you that, hey, this person is enlightened, that person is enlightened, hey, there could have been people back then who thought this way and wrote stories, legends, accounts of someone like Buddha having attained enlightenment. And this promise of enlightenment is something that people run after often, and you can see a lot of that in Indic religions. But here's the sad part. You can't prove any of this. You can't prove enlightenment exists. You can't prove that it's a real thing. Let's discuss that. Nobody can prove that X does not exist. You can replace X with anything. A dog with 2 tails does not exist. All I can say is that this dog, according to all my understandings of biology, everything any expert would say this is how biology works. According to that, and according to my knowledge of anatomy and how mammal bodies work, it is impossible for a dog to have 2 tails. But I cannot prove that a dog with 2 tails does not exist. I can search every square inch of the whole world and see if this dog exists anywhere to find some evidence to show people who wouldn't believe me if I say that a dog with 2 tails exists. You can always argue that, hey, the dog was somewhere else when you were looking here, it was there when you were looking over at this place, and that way you can always argue that you didn't find it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like I said, I could have examined every square inch of the whole world, of the whole universe. I still wouldn't be able to prove that this dog does not exist. You can make arguments that, hey, you can't see the dog with normal light, normal visible light. It's only visible in infrared or ultraviolet or whatever, and you can't perceive it. So if you can't perceive the dog, how can you say that it doesn't exist? These are familiar arguments I'm sure you've heard. The only difference between this dog and this idea of enlightenment is that there are many stories and legends around this idea of enlightenment. So you are primed, people are primed for believing in this idea of enlightenment. But out of nowhere, when I give you an idea of a dog with 2 tails, you're not primed for it. You are less likely to believe me when I say such an idea, even though these 2 ideas have the same level of validity. We should believe in things in proportion to how much evidence is there supporting that thing. People always ask me, Oh, you're an atheist. Can you prove that God does not exist? No, I can't. I can't prove that God does not exist. Specific definitions of God, they're logically impossible, and so I can make a case there. But an arbitrary, vague, supernatural power, I cannot prove it does not exist. But just because something cannot be proven to not exist, does that mean it does exist? Think about this. In science, we call ideas like these unfalsifiable ideas. I made an entire video on that. You can check it out here. I'll link it below. You will get an idea of how science deals with such ideas. But people aren't always perfectly logical, are they? People hold beliefs for emotional reasons sometimes. People might desperately want something like enlightenment in their life. For that desperate need, people might end up just believing it and following an idea to hopefully achieve whatever reward, and combine that with an idea that can never be proven to be real, and people can spend their entire lives in search of such a thing. And that's exactly what happens with ideas like enlightenment. All religions are basically like this. They give out promises that can never be disproven, and people can live their entire lives thinking this thing is real and I can attain it if I make this sacrifice in life. Do I worship a certain way? Do I pray 5 times a day? Do I give all my money to this person? Do I follow this diet? Do I reject all worldly pleasures? The only thing I want people to take away from this video is don't fall into this pit. Don't self-sabotage based on a claim that someone said or a legend from some holy book. Simply because the idea has not been disproven. Ask yourself, what kind of verified evidence is there supporting this idea? These types of topics really fascinate me. Science, rationality, how the human brain is so extremely flawed. It's so prone to biases and logical fallacies, and yet it's the only way we experience and learn about this world we live in. What is real, what is not real, all these things must be processed with the help of our brain. And this organ is so flawed. Now, I like to learn about such topics and explore them in my videos. And if you like such topics also, feel free to subscribe to my channel and watch my other videos also. Now, this goes without saying, but a lot of the topics I do tend to be offensive to many people. You can just look at the comments. And for this reason, sponsors generally don't want to associate with me. But these are topics that a lot of people want to watch. And this channel can only survive with the help of your support. And because I do YouTube full time, your support is what keeps me going. If you do choose to support me, I've provided links for all that below. I'm extremely thankful to the patrons who already support me in my highest tiers. And if you can't really financially support me, hey, share this video with your friends. Comment below. Any help with the algorithm is really appreciated. If you like this video, you might also like this one where I talked about the difference between proof and evidence. I will see you in the next one. Till then, remember, science is dope.